Hey guys, Axis and Allies Militaria. So today I wanted to go over my two favorite World War II German tunics. That is the herringbone twill, or the summer weight tunic, and then the tropical tunic. Those are my two all-time favorite tunics. So first of all, I want to go over the different models because the models are basically the same for the summer and then the tropical. So the first one is the first model. That's this one right here. This is the herringbone twill, the summer tunic. Now, first of all, the first model, sometimes they're referred to as the M40, sometimes M41. The second model is referred to as the M42, and then the third model is referred to as the M43. I just go by first model, second model, and third model. That just seems easier. And all of those names are just names that modern collectors have given to the different models. In Germany, they were just simply different patterns as the years went on. That's all it is. They were still basically a summer tunic or a tropical tunic. So let's first talk about it. This is a first model herringbone twill tunic. Now, there's three things you can look at to tell you what it is. So first of all, buttons. First model, 6 buttons. But more than that, it's the pockets. So with the first model, they had pleated pockets, scalloped pocket flaps. So again, 6 buttons, pleated pockets, and a scalloped pocket flap. That's for the first model. Now, this is a tropical tunic, but again, it followed the same pattern. So now they went down from 6 buttons down to 5. But to maintain the same aesthetic, they maintained the scallop pocket flap, but they removed the pleat. And then as the war went on, the third model, I don't have an example of that, they made the pocket flap straight. Still no pleats in the pocket, but they went back to 6. So why did they go 6, 5, 6? I'm not 100% sure. I think with the first model, that's what they were used to making with all their other tunics, so they maintained that. But then they realized the soldiers weren't wearing that 6 button when they were out, especially in the summer, so they applied that to this. And then from some things that I've read, they went back to the 6 because sometimes having this open flap got in the way during combat. I don't really know, but that's just some things that I've learned. When it comes to the colors of the tunics, so the herringbone twill was like this greenish, maybe some people say a slight bluish tint to it. And then the tropical tunics, they were either this olive green, khaki, or a tan color. And then while they were in the desert, obviously they would become faded. So now let's take a look at these tunics in a little more detail. So like I said, this is a first model herringbone or summer tunic. So this soldier, it has this shoulder boards with this red piping on it. The red means artillery. Let me first show this. Over here, this is rank. This is Obergefreiter, which is like corporal, if you were to compare it to like the US military. Then below on his left sleeve was this artillery. I believe this is a heavy artillery proficiency patch. Now, if we were to look at the other side though, it has an Edelweiss, which was for mountain troops. So this was a mountain artillery soldier. Now over here, this is the eagle, and I wanted to cover the application of these eagles. So the eagles were either above the pocket or they were like partially over the pocket flap, and I'll show you that on the other one. So there was 2 basic types of stitching. This was the first type of stitching right here. I am not an expert on German stitching, but I've been told by other people who know a lot more that this is an originally applied eagle. You can also tell because there's no ghosting of another stitching that was on here. Here are the the sizes are right here. They're printed on here. On the inside, they have these S buttons, and this was so the soldiers could do quick repairs. If something happens to this button, they could simply just take this off and this just pops out and they could put a new one in. This has no lining in it like the wool jackets. This one has like a sweatband attached to the collar. So instead of staining the uniform collar, that would help it last longer by putting this on there. And then right here, as with all the German uniforms, they have these 3 holes. They would slide these hooks in here, and then that would hook underneath their belt, so it helped to support the weight of the belt. Now let's take a look at the tropical tunic. So this one, like I said, is a second model. This has rank also, but this is a Gefreiter, which is like a private first class. Now this one has shoulder boards, but this has the light green, which was for the Panzer Grenadiers, some also motorcycle, but they fought alongside the tanks. So they would protect the tanks while they were in combat. And then they were mechanized infantry, so they would protect the tanks, and then they were infantry too. So they had a dual purpose. Now, earlier tunics, they would have different colors in here that would basically match this. But again, to streamline the whole entire process of manufacturing, they just made it like a single color for all the tunics, regardless of whatever your job was. This is tropical, this is herringbone twill, so it's a little bit different colors. Now over here, with the eagle, it's stitched over the pocket. So it's just a different style, both are right. Now this one is called zip and flip stitching. I don't even know how they do this, because they just stitch, they fold the eagle over, they stitch it, and then I just don't know where the rest of the stitching goes, but it might be right underneath here, but I don't know how they got it to go over, but they're really good about it. The pocket, obviously, there's probably stitching underneath here, you just cannot see it. Now with this one, I just got this and I learned a lot about it. So again, same thing as the other one, the S clips right here. This one's made by Peek and Kloppenberger, Kloppenberg, not Kloppenberger, Peek and Kloppenberg, which is actually still around making clothes. And then I saw this number, and so I was thinking maybe this is a unit number. And then I did some research, and actually it's, you see shadowing right there of numbers. And all that was like batch numbers of the material. This one has a medical pouch, this one does not. And this is like paper button right here. Again, everything else is basically the same on these tunics. And then this one does not have that sweatband on it. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. Oh, and then right here, I should touch on this. This has 2 awards. Now, earlier in the war, they would put these little loops, they would attach it permanently, and then they could put the awards through the loop, so it wouldn't create these types of tears. But obviously, as the war progressed, they would get awards out in the field, and they didn't have, you know, seamstress or whatever it was, so they just put it through the pocket. The Germans were really big into wearing their awards, which is very different from American soldiers. They would just wear their awards in their dress uniforms, and the Germans would wear their awards on their combat uniforms. And actually, if you see the build of this, it's very similar with these lines going around, and then same thing here. There's one right here too. These 2 lines of stitching. Each manufacturer had their own designs. So again, I just wanted to share, oh yeah, one thing I wanted to also touch on, collar. So Germans, they had this V stitching going on the collar. That's very common on all of their tunics. You can see that. And then when I was showing this style of stitching was specific to Peek and Kloppenburg, the way they attached this. Anyhow, so again, you have the first model, pleated pockets, scallop pocket flaps, 6 buttons. Second model, scallop pocket flaps, maintain that aesthetic, but they got rid of the pleats, 5 buttons. And then the third one, it was a straight pocket flap and no pleats, and then it went back to the 6. Now the reason they really did this was, first of all, there's 3 reasons for all the changes. So function over form. As the war progressed, the soldiers wanted something that was more comfortable to wear. It wasn't as heavy. Second was material shortage. As the war went on, they had less and less shortage. They had less and less material, so they needed to conserve what they did have. And then they needed to speed up the manufacturing process. So obviously these pleated pockets, that takes more time for a seamstress to make. And then this was wasting more material. Then as the war progressed, they got rid of the pleats to kind of speed up the process, but they still want to maintain that aesthetic. And then by the end of the war, they needed to make it fast. They needed to conserve as much material as possible, so they just made a straight flap, just put it on there. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.